My name is Tim Klassen. Been going to church since I was negative 9 months old. My great-great-grandparents were the ones who first came to Christ in our family lineage. I was 15 years old when I knew that I was called into ministry. It was the second time that I had clearly heard the voice of God. It wasn't an audible voice, but I remember distinctly hearing His voice in my spirit. I thought I was going to be a school teacher. And I was spending time in prayer, just in my bed before going to sleep, and I heard God say, you are going to be a teacher, but it's not going to be in the school, it's going to be in the church. For me, it just gave me a clarity of knowing why I'm here. I knew I no longer had to think about, well, what am I going to study in school? Where am I going to go after high school? I just knew I had a clarity. Okay, I'm called to preach. I'm called to be a pastor. But I told God that He was going to have to be the one to make it all happen, because I just said, how do you become a pastor? Do you start knocking on churches and saying, I heard the voice of God? I told God I didn't want to do that He was going to have to open up the opportunity for ministry, and that I was just going to keep preparing myself and make myself available to Him. The very first CD series that I studied through of Brother Copeland's was The Authority of the Believer. So that's one of the first things I think of when I think about his teachings that have challenged me and affected me, is understanding the authority that we have, that we are walking in victory here and now, not suffering and trudging through life until we finally get to heaven, but we're actually supposed to pray, Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And so the authority of the believer has been big. I'm constantly encouraging people to seek God's will for where they're supposed to be in a church. God led us to Niagara Worship Center in August of 2009, and just started serving, started getting involved, and more opportunities opened up, and I never knew I'd end up pastoring the church. I was just one of the congregants here, and but more opportunities came. I got involved in children's ministry and youth ministry, and came a time when the senior pastor at the time was going to be stepping down, and he had been mentoring me and pouring into me, and ended up getting put before the board, and the board said, we don't want to look anywhere else. We'd like to bring you in as our new pastor. They really did embrace me, and it was incredibly encouraging for me as a young man coming in, going from that goofy guy who runs kids' church downstairs and is wearing strange costumes and strange props and bringing in wacky things to entertain their kids in kids' church, to now I'm the guy who stands up front and is instructing them. So that was tough for me, not because the church made it hard. The church welcomed me, embraced me. There wasn't a challenge with them and how they treated me. It was more just an internal challenge for me, and me coming to a place of understanding where God's called me to be, and that despite my age, despite lack of experience, that if God has anointed me, then He'll enable me to do it. And so every week I get to preach to people who have read the Bible for much longer than me, studied the Bible. Some of them have taught the Bible in teaching positions, leadership positions for much longer than me in the church. And it's very, very humbling preaching to my parents, to my in-laws, to my grandparents, to siblings. And so for me, it's been an internal challenge of realizing if God's called me, then He knows what He's doing. And for me, it was just a need to remain grounded in the Word, to know who God sees you, who He's called you to be, and who He has made you to be. And just relying on that, and realizing, if you want to be encouraged in knowing that God can use you, just pick up the Bible and read any of the people that are in the Bible, or messy people with messy lives who continually make mistakes, and yet God used them. And so I just had to continually remind myself, God can use me.